With the new season just around the corner, let's talk F1 now with one of the most recognisable faces and voices in the sport. Jennie Gow has been with the BBC as their pit lane reporter for over a decade, and I'm sure is just as excited as the rest of us for the first race in Melbourne. With new drivers on the grid, one very famous driver wearing an arguably even more famous race suit, and hopes that 2025 will be one of the most competitive years yet. Jenny, hello, how are you? Thank you for joining us on this Sporting Planet.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me the indulgence of talking about F1, which I clearly love. And I hope you will too at the end of this to our lovely audience.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you are the oracle, so we are hoping that you will, as you say, for those that maybe are a bit on the well, unsure of whether or not they want to watch this F1 season, because I think in past seasons, not last season, but past seasons, it maybe not it hasn't been as competitive as we'd like it to be. But we'll get to that maybe a little bit later on. First of all, tell us about the F1 75 launch, which was at the O2 Arena in London just a couple of weeks ago. What did you make of it?
Oh, I was just saying hi to the dog who's in the
Sorry,
background
my
now.
dog
I
is
feel like I need to acknowledge
he is a frequent visitor to this sporting planet.
well, we love dogs in F1, and most of the
Yes.
drivers now seem to have a dog. Lewis Hamilton started that trend, and it's continued now. Everyone seems to have a dog, and they all have little passes that allow them into the paddock.
Wow.
So yours is
Would be
surely
very
on its
welcome.
way. Yes.
I hope so.
But F175, what an event it was. F1 has never done anything like this.
Mm.
It's to celebrate its being 75 years old, but actually it was a revelation. So it was at the O2 Arena, and lots of fans bought tickets. I think the tickets sold out within minutes. And I wasn't really around to see the fans come in. I was busy working, I was doing the red carpet and speaking to drivers and team members. So I had no idea what to expect. I don't think anyone really had an idea of what to expect. And I walked into the O2 Arena at exactly 8 o'clock when it all kicked off to see the O2 Arena absolutely full to the brim of F1 fans excited about the start of this season. And I think, speaking to fans, it's one of the most highly anticipated seasons ever in F1 history in 75 years. So it was really apt that the launch took place, that each team was recognised, they all got their moment to shine, and the fans were able to interact and see what their car would look like, what the drivers would look like this season, and maybe pick a new team to support if you're new to F1.
Like you say, for it to sell out in minutes just goes to show its popularity, and probably goes to show that if they did that throughout the world, it would sell out everywhere because F1 is just so popular. Does it sort of also help to encapsulate the journey that F1 has gone on since the last decade when it moved into the ownership of Liberty Media?
I mean, what a difference under Bernie, who did so much for the sport. It never promoted itself. That was one of the things. It wasn't on social media. You couldn't become an F1 fan because it was almost like a closed shop. If you knew about it, that's fine. If you didn't, it would pass you by.
Mm.
And sometimes we'd go to cities where the race was on, and you wouldn't even know. There'd be no promotion. Maybe there would be a flag fluttering at some point, but nothing. And Liberty came in and have just changed the game. Not only did they do a deal with Netflix and Drive to Survive, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, and that's changed it with new audiences coming in, but they also promote heavily on social media. They're interacting, they have their own channel, TV channel now. So they're creating content around the world. And that's so different from where we were 10 years ago.
Mm.
And it's brought a whole new audience and generation to F1, which is really exciting as well going forward.
Well, let's pick up on what you said with Drive to Survive, because that's been a massive success for Netflix. What I love about all these sporting documentaries is you get to know the people behind the wheel, for example, in this case. And that's what's great about it, because we learn more stories about everyone involved in F1.
Yeah, it was almost a lucky accident, really, with season one that Mercedes and Ferrari didn't want anything to do with the show. They said no.
Really?
And there was nothing that to make them say yes. So the producers had to find different storylines. They had to find a way of saying and telling the story without those two teams involved. And actually, I think it's made the whole series the hit that it is now, because they found Gunther Steiner.
Mm,
He never would have got so much TV time if it hadn't have been for the fact that he was willing to speak to the cameras
mm.
where other team principals weren't. And they found those hidden storylines that just encapsulated what F1 is. And going forward, we had obviously the debacle of the 2021 season. And I think that's when it spread to a mass audience, and everyone knows where they were, what they were doing, how they reacted to that news of the end of the 2021 season with, Red Bull, Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen going up against each other, and it being decided basically off the track.
And that's what's great about these documentaries that we see across all sports, that we learn all these intricate details that we might not know otherwise. Looking ahead to the new season, one of the biggest stories, of course, Jenny, is that of Sir Lewis Hamilton, his move to the most famous team in the sport's history, Ferrari. What have you been hearing about his first few weeks at Ferrari?
Well, I mean, it's been quite the launch. We've known about it for a whole year. It was announced in January last year. So it's been a really slow burn. And all of a sudden, once we heard the rumors that he was actually going to launch and it would be a big spectacle of him stepping out, not only in red, but in the red car, I mean, it's just been massive to the point where one of the Tifosi, the Italian fans, actually sawed down a tree so that they could get access to a better view of Lewis Hamilton at the track at Fiorana. And it was just the hype around him joining Ferrari has been immense. And he's come out and said he's slowly bonding with his new car, his new team. But I think there is a real sense of what can he do?
Mm,
And speaking to other journalists, fans, no one knows. No
mm,
one knows what his potential is. He said last year he wasn't fast enough. And this is a man who has the record for the most amount of poles, who is the fastest man in F1. So it's a question of, is he up to it? Can he bond with the SF25, the Ferrari this year? And how quickly can he do that? And it's just fascinating to see him reinvent himself. He's saying he's re-energized, he's enthused about this season. And you didn't get that for the last couple of years at Mercedes.
So, what do you think lured him to Ferrari? Is it to drive for the name of Ferrari?
He's always said it was his childhood dream. And I have to be honest and say he's never verbalized that to me in any of the interviews I've had with him. He was always very much a Mercedes man.
Yeah.
He was with the team for 12 seasons. He signed with the Mercedes McLaren team when he was a child.
Mm,
So it's a big move, a big step away, and a really decisive decision, because he's ended that relationship with Mercedes to go
mm,
to their rival. But as you say, it was his boyhood dream, and he is fulfilling that prophecy now. And yes, I think the pull of going to Ferrari was big,
mm.
but also the paycheck is massive, and the possibilities for Ferrari. I think on their first tweet with Lewis Hamilton on social media, I should say, is Instagram, all the different social medias, they earned millions of dollars for their sponsors. So it's a collaboration that is so timely for
Mm.
F1. It couldn't be more popular across the world.
I mean, it's two iconic names coming together, isn't it? Do you think you're going to get used to seeing you in the red Ferrari?
No, possibly not. It's just such a switch, and his helmet design has changed massively again, and it's a very yellow helmet, which is an iconic image in a Ferrari. So it's going to take a while to get used to seeing the 44 on the Ferrari car, because he stays with his number; it goes with him. But I actually think that as he slowly bonds with the car, we will slowly bond with the idea of him being a Ferrari driver too.
Yeah.
It'll be a shared experience.
Yes, I think so. But Ferrari, of course, is a team that's always scrutinised because of its long-standing tradition in the sport, its popularity as well. The other driver is Charles Leclerc. How do you think he's going to cope with having Hamilton in the team?
Oh, Natalie, it's going to be fascinating. Everyone is waiting with bated breath. Charles Leclerc, one of the fastest men in F1, going up against Lewis Hamilton, one of the fastest men in F1. So, how they turn their fortunes around will be really keenly watched. Charles Leclerc has made some mistakes along the way, haven't we all? But when you're in an F1 car, in a Ferrari, the tifosi, the Italian media, the pressure and scrutiny, as you say, on a Ferrari driver is unlike anything else. Fred Vasseur is the team principal. He has known both of these drivers since they were boys, teenagers, going up the levels of, before you get to F1 and karting, you go to single seaters. So he knows those guys inside out. He has brought Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari. There was no way anyone else would have been able to lure him, Lewis Hamilton, to that brand. But Fred will oversee and manage those two drivers, and time will tell. Does Lewis Hamilton still have it within him to push Charles Leclerc,
Mm.
or will he fade away and Charles be the rising star? We don't know. And
Mm.
Ferrari do have the capacity to win that championship this year, the Constructors' Championship. And I think they've got true drivers who could win the Drivers' Championship. So let's see what happens. We won't know until maybe race 7, I'm guessing,
Uh-huh.
that how
Okay.
it's going to work out.
Where that dynamic sort of lies within that sport in that moment. I mean, it's that case of if I use a football sort of recent football story. You remember when David Raya signed for Arsenal, and they obviously had Aaron Ramsdale. There was a period where Mikel Arteta kept saying, "I have two number one goalkeepers." Can you really have two number ones driving for one manufacturer, one constructor?
It's an interesting debate. You look at the likes of Red Bull, with Max Verstappen clearly the number one driver. The whole team is centered around him succeeding, to the point where Sergio Perez was pushed out at the end of last year. And Liam Lawson is coming into the team alongside Max Verstappen. He's a New Zealander, he's had a few races. But to jump into that team alongside Max Verstappen is going to be tough. So
Mm.
you can see their principle of Red Bull backing a number one driver. You look at in the other direction at McLaren, who won the Constructors' Championship for the first time since 1998 last year. And they definitely have the potential to have two number one drivers. You have Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And either of those could win a world championship this year. So it takes time for that relationship to develop, but you can bet your bottom dollar that Lewis Hamilton will go into that team and try and mold it to be his team. Charles
Mm.
Leclerc will do the same thing. So how it's going to work out is just another indicator of what makes this season so exciting.
Yeah. You mentioned Max Verstappen. We must talk about him. Eventually won his fourth world title last year. Made a great start before a little bit of a dip in form, shall we say, midway through the year. And then there was so much excitement because there's all different types of winners, and it was fabulous. Do you think he's going to be up there once again? Is his car up to it? Is it as competitive as the McLaren, as the Ferrari?
So we've had testing already. So that's almost 24 hours of track time for the teams to gather information and to see exactly how their car might run this season. It's the first time the cars have hit the track and done any competitive running or any real running, I should say. And McLaren looked the strongest. Going through the numbers, not on just one lap pace, but on actual race pace. It looked and indicated that they were ending the season or starting this season as they ended it last year. But testing is so tricky to get a real gauge for.
Mm.
And we don't know how that Red Bull will be on track when it's in a competition form. The numbers look close between the top four, with McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes all up there, maybe. And even Lando Norris said that he thought Aston Martin could potentially be up there as well, and that Fernando Alonso could win a race, maybe. Now, they've poo pooed that and said, we don't think so. But I think there's so much that is unknown about how that Red Bull will develop. Adrian Newey, their chief designer, has left the team. He left at the end of last year. And he's gone to Aston Martin. So that's why there's so much hype around Aston Martin, because they've got this amazing miracle worker going to join the team. And he's got his old board that he still designs on, a very old school philosophy. And that's been shipped from Red Bull to Aston Martin in their head office. So how will that team perform? How will harmony be in that team as well, with Max Verstappen and his father Jos and Christian Horner and all of the things going on around that team and Christian Horner himself? It's an unsettled team.
Mm.
So we'll see how it develops.
And as you pointed out, there is the rookie Liam Lawson, who is now partnering with Verstappen. He's one of 6 newcomers to F1 this year, which seems really exciting for all of us. Is there one that has perhaps made a big impression already on you?
I think if you look at the different newbies, debutantes, and some, they're rookies but not quite rookies, because some of them are taken to the track already. But if you look at Oliver Behrman driving for Haas, now he got a few spins last year when drivers were either unwell or not able to take to the track for a race. And if you think back, it was in Bahrain last season when Carlos Sainz was driving for Ferrari and got appendicitis. And it was Ollie Behrman that stepped in as a Ferrari junior and had a phenomenal race. So he's got some experience, but he's also caught the eyes of a lot of people. And I think driving for Haas, one of the teams that can either come out the blocks really fast or kind of stumble out of them and not have success. It's hard to know which way that car will go, but he is certainly someone who excites everybody and who I think will be really, he could be the real deal. Even though he's driving for Haas, he could show something really exciting.
Yeah, so he's a name to look out for. We are just a few weeks away then from the first race in Melbourne. You've already mentioned Oscar Piastri. He's born and raised in the city. What a story it would be if he was to win that one.
An interesting fact for you, Natalie, is
Go on.
that no one has ever won their home Grand Prix in Australia. So no Australian has ever stood on the top step.
No way.
And it's so weird because the opener of the season is traditionally Australia. There have been some great Australians to drive, but no one has ever managed to do it. And the thought that, I mean, a man who's grown up very near the circuit, 23-year-old, the thought that he could achieve this, and he really could. It's so exciting. I keep saying exciting, but there aren't that many superlatives to give to F1 other than how exciting it's going to be. And I spoke to him at the end of last season, and it was just after McLaren had been given their Constructors champion. And the ticker tape was all around us. It was little bits of gold flickering on the pit floor. And I spoke to Oscar and I said to him, oh, it must be so exciting. Constructors champion for the first time since 98. And he just looked at me and said, it'll be even more exciting next year when I win the actual drivers' championship. And I mean, he's put it out there. He is not a number 2 driver. He's coached and his manager is Mark Webber. You may remember that name. He was very famously in the Red Bull team and didn't want to be a number 2 driver. So he's got all of that history, all of that knowledge of how to help Oscar Piastri not be a number 2 driver and go out there and beat Lando Norris. It's not going to be easy. Lando Norris really pushed Max Verstappen last year. So let's see what happens. But I think Piastri standing on the top step in Melbourne with his mum just underneath taking a selfie of him, I think that's possible. Even highly possible.
Yeah. You're forgetting Mark Webber there going, that's my man. That's my man as well.
Exactly.
Of course, this is the final year before the new set of regulations come in 2026. Can you just explain to everyone who's watching this on this sporting planet what it all means, what it means for the teams, the drivers, maybe a change in competitive order as well?
Yeah, 26 is it's a kind of weird place to be because obviously the last rule change was fairly substantial, and it's been it will be 4 years that the rules have not changed, which means the competitive order gets closer and closer as the years go by. Now, everyone would say, well, why change the rules
Mm,
when the teams are getting closer to each other and the battle is better and it's less predictable? But it wouldn't be F1 if they didn't change the rules and force the teams to think of new things, to have new technology, to really push the boundaries of engineering. So they will change the engine, they'll change the chassis, which is the actual car design. So it goes back to scratch. And that's why Adrian Newey moving to Aston Martin is such big news because he takes all of his knowledge of how to design some of the best F1 cars ever in the history of the sport to Aston Martin.
mm,
And with that sort of advantage, you're basically buying yourself more of a chance to come out the blocks with a competitive car. So we've seen Red Bull dominate. We've seen Mercedes dominate. Red Bull before that dominate. And it's just who gets on top of those rules, who finds the grey areas within those rules and exploits them the best.
mm.
So we're excited about this season, but actually next season gives a whole range of opportunities for all the teams, all 11 teams, as in a new one coming in, an American team, which is really exciting for the Andretti brand. And we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know how those rules will be interpreted yet.
Mm.
So it'll be fascinating to see when teams switch and have their focus on next year, as they fade away from championship challenging. I think they will start to look more ahead to 26 and take away their development of this year's car and focus it on next year's. So there's lots of things going on behind the scenes of this year and next year to make it even more dramatic.
Nice little refresh for everybody then going into 2026, like you say. We look forward to that. So, Jenny, I'm going to put you on the spot now. Got to finish things up and ask you what is going to happen this year? Who's going to win the Drivers' Championship and who's going to come away with the Constructors' World title as well?
Well, I think I was remiss, by the way, in talking about the rookies and who's going to impress. I probably should have highlighted Kimi Antonelli, who's driving for Mercedes, and he is also one of the rookies. It takes over from big shoes of Lewis
Mhm.
Hamilton in that Mercedes, and actually the Mercedes is looking quite good. With George Russell also challenging and doing well in testing. So, what's going to happen? Maybe Kimi Antonelli will be on the podium quite quickly.
Yeah.
Um, is one theory. I'll put it out there just in case, because I didn't want to go through this and not mention him because he's a really exciting talent and very young. And Italian is good. Um, so I think that could be an interesting combination to see how well he does at Mercedes. But will he challenge for a championship? I'm not 100% convinced. I think he'll win races, but not championships. So who is going to win? That's the question you asked, and it's really, really tough. I don't really want to say, but you're twisting my arm,
Yes,
so I
come on.
will. Let's go with Ferrari winning the Constructors' Championship. And if they're winning the Constructors, they'll probably have done well enough with both drivers for both drivers to challenge for the championship in the drivers. So let's go with Hamilton. Just to be romantic about things. I mean, could he do it? There's still a chance for him to win his 8th world title, and some would say he should have won that already. Can he do that this year? Maybe, just maybe. So let's go Hamilton and
Crikey.
Ferrari.
Crikey, you've been swooned by the love of Ferrari and Hamilton. That's what's happened there. But I like it. I like that. And as you say, that will be his a record 8th world title, which would be some feat, certainly. It's going to be a really exciting year. You've already pointed that out. It's a lot of unknowns, a lot of close fought races, I'm sure. And it's just going to go to the end, we hope. Jenny, it's been absolutely fabulous. Thank you for joining us on this Sporting Planet.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.